Welcome. I'm Liz Taylor, ocean explorer, naturalist, and entrepreneur.
I'm Sylvia Earle. I'm an oceanographer, explorer at the National Geographic, founder of Mission Blue, and an ocean elder. Absolutely delighted to be talking about what we're addressing today with Doug Tallamy. I mean, we're looking at Earth as a system. Of course, the world is what?
Blue.
But the terrestrial parts are distinctly, typically green. And I think the excitement about tying it together today, just as we tried to do when we talked with our friend about the green, tying the green and the blue together in a recent discussion.
Mm-hmm. But that's what we do on
trees.
But that's what we do on Dive In. We host these informal and open conversations with the open ocean community on topics of wonder and interest. And we are so honored today to have Doug Tallamy joining us with The World is Blue. So Doug, if you can turn on your, there you go. He's here to join us.
I'm here. Yeah. Ready to dive in.
Yes, thank you very much. We are diving in, and it's just a joy to have you here with us today. This is our year-end show, and it's a really good time for people to reflect and think about things that they can do themselves to make a real difference every day as they go about their business, from the crazy holidays with a Z all the way into the new year and making a compelling difference.
Whether it's your front yard or your backyard or your community or your state, your country, it's the world we're talking about.
And Doug, you're there at the University of Delaware, involved in entomology and wildlife ecology. And you really had a number of books come out and focused really on this whole idea of rewilding the world. I mean, so much of it has been paved over and fundamentally changed in really shocking ways in a very short period of time.
You know, we're seeing pretty scary headlines these days. We're in the 6th great extinction, and the UN says we're going to lose 1 million species, and we've lost 3 billion birds from North America. Pretty scary headlines, which means our park system is not working.
Right.
Which means we have to do conservation outside of our park system, and that's where my idea of Homegrown National Park comes in. All the land outside of our systems, everywhere, we have to have functional ecosystems, not just in little places, because we need ecosystem services everywhere, because we humans are everywhere. So it's a big job, but there's a lot of us out there who can participate. So if we just think about the area of the planet that we can influence, and if you own property, that's obvious. That's where you start. If you don't own property, help somebody who does. But that involves everybody.
We try to do our part. We planted this bush poppy a few years ago, and it's kind of taken over this big corner of the yard. And it's commonly called the fried eggplant because these flowers are about this big and they just look like a big fried egg. But the bees, not just these honeybees, which aren't actually native, but just a host of the animals just seem to adore them. And same, of course, you have the native poppies, which
the
California poppy that hosts these little bumblebees,
dozens of kinds of native bees and butterflies. It's the nutrient system in action. Doug, I try to imagine what it must have been like 500 years ago when birds and insects migrated in such quantity across not just North America, but around the world, chewing their way across the planet and distributing nutrients that built the soil that now has been so degraded over, in my lifetime and yours, through practices that are really not friendly to nature or to, in the end, back to us.
It was a very different world. It was vegetated everywhere. Yeah. And all of those plants were capturing energy from the sun, turning it into food, and then they passed it on to animals. When just the ducks in North America migrated north or south, it would black out the sky for days.
Mhm.
Now you see one little flock go over and that's it.
I know people are excited. It's like, oh, I saw some Canada geese, or
Yeah,
or I
yeah.
saw, you
Yeah,
know,
they try to get rid of them
or they
because
try to get rid of them because there's too many. You know, it's just crazy. But it's very true that, you know, the whole baseline is kind of shifted, and we've all been witnesses to these big changes. But it really comes down to, you know, looking at the little guys and taking the time
what
to.
is this little guy?
Well, I almost had to get this out, but this hand lens, you know, these are my tools of the trade here. You know, I get my little mason jar and the hand lens to get out in the yard. But this guy, I actually almost ate him by accident. I was picking some raspberries, and I kind of looked at this little dot that was, and
It looks like he's on guard.
yeah, and then he started moving about. I let him crawl on me, but he's just the coolest little pseudo scorpion.
Related to spiders.
It's the pseudo scorpion. Look how
Related
cute
to
it is.
scorpions, but it's a pseudo scorpion.
Yeah.
Little guy doesn't bite,
No, they don't bite, but it
at
was.
least bite you.
No, it didn't bite me, but it was just the coolest thing to see. And to, you know, just to be able to get outdoors and look for those small critters in the yard, and get so busy just running around every day, whatever we happen to do. You know, I'm running the business. We got students and finals and everything else to deal with now, and you're writing your book, and it's overwhelming. And
Stop.
but sometimes we just stop and
Look,
look at things, and even looking at our food. Like, this is an artichoke, right? You think about an artichoke.
an artichoke that we did not eat,
We didn't eat it. We just let it go.
and the blossoms are just heaven, like a purple miracle for bees of various sorts.
There are tremendous health benefits in just spending a minute watching something like this. Your blood pressure drops, your attention span increases, your stress level decreases. And when your stress level decreases, you do everything better. Just tiny little interactions with nature.
Yeah.
We're starting to appreciate how powerful those interactions are.
I think you live longer as a consequence.
But you do everything better. Yeah.
But the bees sometimes don't live longer when they encounter the little assassins. This is, you know, one of the
Little crab spider there. Or,
the little crab spider lurking in the artichoke, waiting for its turn to be part of the food chain.
but they're
Yeah,
just
the crab spiders can change their color depending on which blossom they're in.
I wondered about that because they come in so many different colors.
Yeah, yeah,
Is it the same species that
yeah.
has that
Well,
capacity?
there's a number of species, but they all can adjust their color to the background that they're sitting on. So
Chameleon-like. Wow.
octopus-like.
Yeah, more like exactly
It's one of those things-
flounder-like.
Flounder-like. You really wish everybody had sort of chromatophores, right? You know, you could switch your colors around a bit. But one of the best experiences I had with a spider is I was helping a group of Boy Scouts get loaded out for a camping trip, and you know, they're all kind of older scouts and
Macho.
leaders of the macho scout
guys.
age, yeah, the teenage scouts, and they all kind of threw their big packs in the back of the truck there, and then they all suddenly in unison backed up, and I'm like, what is it? And I looked, and there was a jumping spider on one of the backpacks. and so I just reached in, I picked it up in my hand, and I carried it off, and I put it in the bushes, and the one, you know, budding Eagle Scout, he just like stands up really straight and goes, "That's the bravest thing I've ever seen."
well, you know, that reflects what our culture is, that nature is terrifying. It's going to hurt you in some way.
You
Yeah.
are so brave.
But it was awesome. And that, you know, but then they all came, and we kind of watched the jumping spider for a little bit before they took off on their trip, but they had a new appreciation for for how cool they really are.
Well, good for you.
But you know, just the whole host of insects, and if we don't take time to look for them, we just lost so many of them without even really knowing it, or thinking about it.
I'm wondering who they are. How did they get there? Their
You know,
history-
Leo Wilson says that insects are the little things that run the world.
Mhm.
We totally
their
depend
history
on them.
precedes that of human beings by so very long. And when you ask, where did you come from? It can take you on a long journey into deep time. Love this tree.
I know. But the same, what do you think are some of the really big factors in, the sort of the loss of insects in such a short period of time? Is it just sort of like a death of 1,000 cuts, or are there kind of major things that we should be aware of?
Yeah, it's been described as a death by 1,000 cuts, but there's some big players: the misuse and overuse of pesticides, the loss of habitat. But what that means is we're taking away the plants that these things depend on. The insects that eat plants have 90% of them have very specialized relationships with particular plants. And when we bring in plants from other continents, they can't eat them. So it's like bringing in a plastic statue. It's there, it's occupying space, but it's not supporting the food web.
Mm-hmm.
So the caterpillars that might eat this oak tree are the food that a chickadee or something else will use to produce its young. And we're talking about thousands of caterpillars. It takes 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to make one clutch of chickadees.
Wow.
Bird that's a third of an ounce. So if you want a breeding bird population in your yard, you need hundreds of thousands of caterpillars. If you have a crepe myrtle or some other, a ginkgo, something from Asia, it's not making any caterpillars.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we've sterilized the landscape. So there's light pollution at night, which takes a very heavy toll on the moths, the adult caterpillars. What else do we have? Well, climate change has been very hard on our insects. The droughts, not many insects survive a forest fire.
No.
And even the floods. A couple of years ago, we had a thunderstorm in our backyard where it dropped 7 inches of rain in 3 hours.
Heavens.
It's like a fire hose, and it just scoured the plants. And I watched it. It took 2 years for the insect life to regain its abundance and just in my yard, that one little local storm.
That's incredible.
And this is happening all the time everywhere now. So,
But Doug, you have met some resistance, it seems to me, from even your fellow scientists, with your understanding that native plants are necessary for the insects, native insects, because of these close relationships. We're omnivorous almost, and we can get away with eating a lot of different things, but so many are very, very specific, right down to the individual species, sometimes family, sometimes broader, but they tend to be the generalists and more abundant, but those that fill the special niches that we need to have a complete operating system for our planet.
yeah.
We need to respect those associations.
That specialization comes from the fact that plants really don't want to be eaten. They want to capture the energy from the sun and use it for their own growth and reproduction. So they protect their tissues with nasty chemicals. And then an insect can adapt to that, but every plant lineage protects itself with a unique cocktail of chemical defenses. So an insect can't adapt to all of them. So they pick 1 or 2 lineages that are really similar, and they get good at getting around those. But then they're locked into it. They've got the specialized enzymes and behaviors and everything that lock them into that particular plant. So when we take milkweeds out of our yards, the monarch butterfly does not start to eat our hostas or our boxwood or something else. You lose the monarch butterfly. It's that simple. So I've gotten a little bit of pushback, but it's mostly from the horticultural trade that has made a living for 100 years on bringing in plants from other continents and selling them as decorations.
Right.
So, we can do that a little bit. We just can't do that all the time.
Right.
Fairchild Gardens in Florida, the Kew Gardens, even though it's scientifically respected, nonetheless, really celebrating the introduction of exotic species from around the world and really promoting it. And here we are.
86% of our woody invasive plants in this country have come from the horticulture trade. So it's not just our yards they're polluting. They're ecological cancers that are running amok. So
I know we battle with English ivy in our own yard for, I don't know, it's been decades. You just can't seem to get rid of it. So every time I get out there, I'm pulling some up, and I always feel it's a great sense of satisfaction when I finally, I'm kind of pulling hand over hand. I get a whole rope of it going, and it's like this big lasso, and I can put it in the green bin.
And hope that it doesn't.
And hope it
start
doesn't
somewhere
escape
else.
somewhere else, you know?
Yeah, it's one of our tougher ones.
Yeah, it's just incredible stuff. This is our little place in Florida. And, you know, we talked before about, you know, how Florida is kind of the poster child for invasive species of all kinds, and especially plants. And here, you know,
Especially humans.
yeah, well, that, but you know, the farm 527 we have down there, you know, you got like a lot of palmettos, and of course protected a lot of the native oaks and added some new oaks and bald cypress and the eastern magnolias and
Buttonwood and native holly and
yeah, everything we deliberately put in to try to
restore
the biodiversity to the area. And yet, you know, we constantly do battle with the pothos.
Oh, but we mostly do battle with the city of Dunedin.
Yeah, well, there's that. And but it does become kind of a problem in some areas because to your point, you know, we have this culture of just kind of wanting this neat, tidy garden, or the monoculture of grass, or using the Roundup, and then so that you don't have to pick up a hoe or a shovel to pull up a weed, and then you go to the gym. You know, it's kind of.
We have 40 million acres of lawn in this country. That's the size of New England, dedicated to a status symbol, to an ecological deadscape. So
we're so glad to get rid of all the lawn here, but it just has really taken a monumental effort and a wonderful group of volunteers that have come through and help us to slowly get ahead of this pothos.
Give the natives a break.
Yeah.
Doug, my mom appeared on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. I think it was 1989, because she wouldn't keep a lawn. She wanted to.
Really? Huh? Well, good for her friend. She was ahead of her time.
Yeah, absolutely was. But one of the neighbors caught on to the idea, because he had a little lawn, but he put a sign on it after, inspired by my mom, to rewild the little patch that he had. And the sign said, "Mow, no mow." I was so happy to get his Saturdays back.
But these little Bidens, these created some real grief for you. Well, for all of us.
We kept my mom's place when she went to greater explorations, and have tried to maintain her spirit by not having a pretty little lawn, but rather to allow the wild plants to thrive. Bidens is a notable pollinator. I mean, pollinated by a lot of supplies pollen for a lot of insects, and also is noted because it produces seeds that birds love, and they also love to hang on to your socks. It's known as stick bite for that reason. Anyway, one of the reasons that people have tended to regard it as a weed. And it wasn't so long ago, there's a new administration in Dunedin now, but not so long ago, the city really took action against having a wild kind of property. And while I was away, sent a notice that they were going to come in, and that I had to bring it down to the legal level of
3 inches.
Yeah, very
Scorched earth.
way too rowdy.
Yeah.
And anything, one thing led to another, and they finally imposed a fine, which they increased till it got to be $28,000 for having a wild yard instead of a tightly, neatly pruned yard. We managed to get it down to $10,000, but I did pay the fine.
Oh my goodness.
But
we also pay you back.
We also inspired, I think, or helped inspire what people inspired by you, and by the movement that is clearly well overdue to work with nature. And National Wildlife Federation has a backyard project, or have had, to encourage people to be friendly to bees and birds and butterflies and human beings by allowing the native plants to grow.
But the Homegrown National Park is just such a it's just such a good common sense, logical thing to do, and it's
overdue.
It's way overdue.
We need to get everybody on board.
You know, we talk about property rights. We can do whatever we want on our property, unless, you know, you're growing a native, then you're not allowed to do it. But what we don't realize is that what you do on your property affects your local ecosystem, which affects everybody.
Yes.
So that 40 million acres of lawn we talked about, that's ruining the watershed.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere. There are four things every landscape has to do. It's got to support the watershed. It's got to sequester carbon, pull the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. It's got to support pollinators. And it's got to support a food web so that you have the life around you. And lawn doesn't do any of those things. So when you have that big lawn, you're wrecking the life that supports us.
Yes.
People are starting to get that, but to have rules that saying you must ruin everything is it's crazy.
They call it development, Doug. I don't know why.
Development, exactly.
It's
Progress.
It's conversion. It's conversion of nature to human purposes that in the end don't serve us well.
They really don't. This is one of the oak trees from our backyard here. It's one of the California live oaks. And this tree is pretty well leafed out in this image, but there's been various times over the years where it's been completely denuded of leaves because of the caterpillars. And you know, I've had people come through and they're like, get rid of those caterpillars, you know, why don't you spray the tree? You're like, no, the tree will be fine. And even as a kid, you know, the summers up in Napa, California, where whole stands of the valley oaks and things would just be chewed, shredded, and there'd be these big webs and things on them. But as you were saying, just literally thousands of caterpillars there, and you really would notice that the following year you would see a big uptick in, you know, birds and lizards and frogs, and so everybody was munching away, and it was so it's just so important to
Meg Lohman, who is our tree person, who has
on our last episode,
who talks about she's in a way a tree protector and but realizes exactly what you're saying about the food chain, but it's hard to find an intact leaf on a tree in a healthy ecosystem. And she talked about that, how the number of spiders and new species that she has found, like going up into the tree tops, top of the forest down, and her new book called Arbonaut.
Oh,
Her experiences in the arboreal part of a forest, high in the tops, but reaffirming the importance of
If
protecting.
you go out and look at the plants in your yard and nothing's eaten, those plants are not doing their job. They're not participating in your local ecosystem.
Right.
We call oaks keystone plants because there's no other plant genus that supports more species of caterpillars. I think we're up to 952 species of caterpillars on oaks alone.
Really?
Wow.
In this country, yeah.
and
If you take them out of the system, the food web collapses, and that's what a keystone does. It holds up that arch. So,
and I think I remember reading from one of your books where you were talking about how people or landscaper had kind of discouraged people from planting oaks because
They're messy.
they're messy, but they take so long to mature that, you know, you wouldn't have a chance to enjoy it in your lifetime. You know, so why not plant the ginkgo or the
we have direct evidence of that not being true, because when we first came to where we're living now in 1975, your brother got a pocket of acorns and planted them. And several trees came out of that pocket full of acorns, and it was a big day. We celebrated when that tree had acorns of its own, and it's out there every year doing its thing. So
and it's
worth waiting for.
They are worth waiting for, and I mean, that particular tree isn't like huge by oak standards, but it's, you know, it's at least about 20 inches in diameter at the base now, and as you say, it produces acorns and caterpillars and just a host of animals that come through to get it, whether it's the acorn woodpeckers or the squirrels. Or what I really love is to pick up an acorn and then it's like riddled with these tiny holes. Right?
That's the acorn weevil. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna share some slides now. So
right.
you're talking. Let me pull them up.
All right, I'm I'm going to stop. I think I have to stop sharing so you can share.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's great because I'm happy to stop sharing.
All right. I'll be with you in a second here.
That's good.
Actually, we can start with this one. Where are we?
I think if people could just magnify the view and look at insects and see how absolutely amazing they are.
Get these out.
Yeah.
Can you see this? Are you seeing this? Am I sharing it?
Yeah. Not yet.
Back. Not yet.
Not seeing it yet.
Uh-oh.
You'll get there though. But
Okay, let's do it again here.
Share screen. Yeah.
but the acorns are. Oh, there we come.
There we go. Huh.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
That's an acorn weevil.
So cool. Look at that.
How would you like to have a nose like that?
Yeah, it's not the nose though. That's an extension of the head capsule, and the mouth parts are way down there at the end of that extension. And they chew a hole into the acorn with those mouth parts and turn around and lay an egg in it. And that's how the weevil, that's how the larva gets into the acorn. That's an acorn weevil larva. Here it is coming out. We're going backwards now. Coming out of the acorn. That's not what I wanted to show you though. So
That's like a backyard miracle or front yard miracle in our case.
Homegrown miracle.
and it's hard to have an oak tree without acorn weevils.
Yeah.
So
Imagine how
It's a
many
bad sign if you don't have any acorn weevils, I think. But you know, when you
look
first
at all these gorgeous creatures.
this is all from my yard. Here, this is what I wanted to show you.
Huh.
That is a pin oak that has just popped up above the leaves. And here's a caterpillar standing on the ground eating the leaves of that pin oak. So you do not have to wait hundreds of years for your oak to start to contribute to your local ecosystem.
And I love that you have the oak leaves left on the ground. And it's, you know, it's another one of these things that, you know,
How do you make soil?
how do you make soil and how do you create the spaces for these kinds of miracles to happen? Job one, don't use a leaf blower, you know.
Yeah, bare soil is the worst thing you can have because there are more species that live underground than above the ground. They're all tiny, but they need this blanket of leaf litter to return the nutrients to the soil, to hold the moisture in there, to protect the soil from the beating sun and erosion. Leaf litter, I call it black gold.
Yes, I totally agree. But that is such an enterprising caterpillar.
That's such an awesome picture. And this guy, look at this.
Let me show you something else.
Caterpillars have faces. So do spiders,
Where am I?
butterflies, and everybody else. Pseudo scorpions. Oh, look at this.
That's a shot of our yard from the same place I took a shot earlier when we moved in. But I've been taking pictures of all the moss species that occur on our property, and I'm up to 1,140.
Wow.
30% of them are on the oaks in our yard. Now, our yard used to be mowed for hay, so there wasn't much there. But I mean, that's 44% of all the moss species that occur in the entire state of Pennsylvania. And they're there because we put the plants back. So we really can rebuild the nature we've lost. Let me see.
Set the table.
And here's 60 species of birds that are breeding on our property because we've got all those caterpillars.
Look at that big juicy green
Yeah.
caterpillar going down the gullet.
That's the drab prominent, and it's on sycamore.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got sycamore because seeds blew in one night on a windy night. One germinated in my cold frame, and I left it there. It's now about 80 feet tall.
Wow.
But you know, I didn't weed it out. It was that simple.
Yeah.
So now we have white-eyed vireos that can breed there because we've got those caterpillars, because we've got the sycamore. It all fits in.
It really does.
And somebody who cares.
Let's see what else. This is what I wanted to show you. You know, this is another statistic we've seen that the World Wildlife Fund says we've lost 2/3 of the wildlife since 1970. But this little experiment at our house where we started from a blank slate convinces me that we can turn it around. You know, we have increased biodiversity at our house by more than 2/3, and it didn't take that long. And we did it just by putting the plants back. So everybody can do that. Landowners everywhere can
It's
do
cause
that.
for hope.
And
That's
you
right.
know,
That's right.
and what about people that, you know, that are like an apartment dweller or, they don't have a yard space. How can they help?
They can help somebody who does. There are land conservancies, there are parks and preserves that are all underfunded and understaffed. They depend on a big volunteer group of people. So so everybody can participate. And if you can't do those things, you can write a check. Everybody needs the money to do these things. So
but I've been thinking about like schools, corporate campuses,
exactly.
places that roadsides that we see, where right now, people just go along with that. They jump on that tractor mower and just annihilate everything along the roadway or, around the school grounds or around a church.
Or you can work with your community. And that's what's happened in Dunedin.
People are starting now.
They're starting to really become celebrated as a city that dedicated more to caring. Now, I must say, I really don't know what the law presently says, but we've gotten away with our wild, rowdy law, and we haven't had a notice about we've got to get in compliance with the weed law. But a lot of communities have those laws.
Oh, they do. And they were all written by people, which means they can all be changed by people. We vote for the people who write those crazy laws.
Yeah.
If we make it clear, if we make it known, this is not what we as the public want.
Right.
Our elected officials will do whatever we want. They just want to keep their jobs. So
that's right. They want to keep getting voted in.
It's up to us.
Yeah.
It's up to us.
Right. They have to elect the right officials.
That. So it's, and we've also seen so much of and we've talked about in some of our past episodes about how much space has been lost just to paving and overdevelopment. And
where does
the state of Ohio is paved over?
Wow, it's just,
how can that be? This is maybe the first time in all of human history that we have a chance to step back and look at the impact that our species has had and is having on the very systems that keep us alive.
Yeah.
And going back when I was a kid, we thought the ocean too big to fail. Put anything in it you want, take anything out of it you want. Trees were either converted into board feet of lumber or pulp for paper, or they were slashed and burned so you could plant something useful.
Hay.
Soybeans.
Soybeans, hay, tobacco, whatever, And
Corn.
but those big monoculture farms seem like they're another big issue in terms of stripping down biodiversity, where you just have hundreds of acres of corn or soybeans, thousands of acres,
millions.
and it's
we do have to feed ourselves, but we don't have. We need to rethink how we feed ourselves.
But most of that goes to the beef that we eat.
Yep.
We don't have to eat the amount of beef that we eat.
That's correct.
And what are we going to do about the plastic in the ocean, Sylvia? What are we going to do about that?
First, you have to know that you've got a problem. And we've been so complacent thinking it just goes away. It doesn't. Now we know. So I think we're right at the edge of making this flip. We have to, if we're going to survive. That nature is not a luxury. Nature is not something you put a fence around.
Yeah.
Nature is our life support system.
Yeah, we are totally dependent on it.
Right.
But it's just, it's so heartening to think that, kind of yard by yard or, block by block,
person by person.
It's the same thing with the plastic. I mean, every single piece of plastic that's out there got there through a series of human hands.
Yeah.
And it seems very true when we're looking at how the biodiversity loss has been driven, that it's been through, a bunch of people spraying Roundup or, making these really poor choices. And we can, again, reverse that now.
I would love to see a slide like this. Let's say by 2050, where could we be? Or even in 10 years, where by 2030 can we go in a better direction? I mean, there's a widespread support for 30% of the land, 30% of the ocean to be restored. And you can be a part of that. I mean, whoever you are, you don't have to be a big landowner, as you point out, Doug. You can talk with those who do have land or support those organizations that are moving in the right direction.
You know, we have this very curious division of labor, where the people who take care of the earth, a few ecologists and a few conservation biologists, it's just a handful of them. Everybody else has a green light to destroy it for some reason. And we call that progress.
Yeah.
Which is so curious to me, because everybody on the planet requires a healthy ecosystem. So it's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't everybody be responsible for good earth stewardship? How did we ever get there? And people say start with the kids and teach them, and absolutely we have to do that, but we don't have time to wait another generation.
Right.
No.
So, us old folks have to start getting involved right now.
Go back and think about the, you know, the witness to change that we you know, we've all seen it. We've all seen the loss over time.
Do you want to show some more images, Doug? You have some beauties there.
Sure. Well, let's see. Okay, keep talking and I'll look at some.
Yeah, you can keep, but you know, I think about when you know, being a kid and wandering around the place there in Florida, and I would, you know, readily find things like the rhinoceros beetles.
Yeah.
These great big
Shiny
armored
black-
shiny beetles, and they'd just be kind of duking it out, you know, on the pathway. And you just be sitting there and watch them
haven't
for
seen-
hours. But I haven't
Yes.
seen one now in years. And
It's very special to see one.
then, you
What-
know, out here, the ponderous borer, you know, another great, these big beetles, and they just aren't there anymore. What
You know,
do
a lot
we-
of people ask me, is this possible to do in a city? This is Pam Carlson's house in Chicago. If you look at this tower back here, that's O'Hare Airport. So she's
Wow.
right there in Chicago. She has 1/10 of an acre, and it's not connected to any natural system at all. So everything you see is a native plant, but she did she did what she had to do. She got rid of her invasive plants. She put in 60 species of native plants on her little 1/10 of an acre, which, by the way, is 3 times smaller than the average lot size in North America. And it's pretty, very nice place to live. But she's recorded 120 species of birds that have used her yard right there in Chicago.
Incredible.
Including the woodcock. There's Pam's woodcock.
Oh, he's so awesome. Look at him.
Wow.
So this is just to say that it works. And you know, Pam's doing it alone in Chicago. What if everybody was doing that, or at least a large proportion of us?
Imagine everyone on her block deciding that they too were going to jump in and do this, dive in.
Yeah, I'll look for another vignette here. Well, all right, right. How about the middle of? Well, let me just tell you a little story.
Yes, please.
In 2014, I was staring at this plant. That's Asclepias tuberosa, butterfly weed. And that's one of the problems right there. We call our native plants weeds, and then we wonder why people don't plant them. So I'm calling this Monarch's delight now. But I was staring at this plant in 2014. The first thing I saw were 2 species of leafcutter bees, a big one and a small one. That's a leafcutter bee, Megachilidae. I know they're leafcutter bees because they carry their pollen on their tummy.
That's so cool. Look,
But they
Instead of
have
saddlebags.
they have very strict requirements. They need pollen and nectar, but they also need soft leaves, and leaves of redbud are perfect because they're really soft and pliable, because they chew out the edges of those leaves and leave these little semicircles, roll them up into a tube, and they stuff them full of pollen.
Wow.
And then they put that whole thing in a crack or a crevice, and that's where they lay their eggs and reproduce. Well, there was a redbud right next to that Monarch's delight, and I'm sure that is why there were leafcutter bees there, because they had everything they needed. Pretty sure that's why there were bumblebees there as well, because bumblebee queens overwinter alone, and when they come out in the spring, they have to start the entire colony themselves. So they have to do all the foraging, and what they need is abundant spring forage. They need a lot of flowers, a lot of pollen and nectar, so that they can get things going. And that's exactly what redbud provides. It blooms, it's one of the first things that blooms in the spring. And there was more than one species of bumblebee there. And then I saw a monarch. Now this was 2014. 2000, I'd gone all of 2013 without seeing a single monarch. It was the low point of the monarch population in the east. There were only 3.6% of them left. And this was June, which is early to see monarchs as far north as I was. So I was very encouraged that maybe they weren't going to disappear after all. And they were there because there was something for them to forage on. The monarchs still, there was another species of milkweed as well. So they had what they needed. They could reproduce, they could get their nectar. So the question is, where was I? I was on the High Line in the middle of Manhattan.
Yeah.
The High Line is it's a renovated, elevated railroad. This is 30 feet above the taxis, right in the middle of everything. And the strip of nature we're looking at here is about 3 feet wide.
Wow.
But it shows you can bring back life to the middle of Manhattan, in the middle of all of our humanness, if you put the plants back. So that, I say, if we can do this in Manhattan, you can do it anywhere.
Absolutely. And how delightful, you kind of almost want to sit there and grab these people passing by and say, look at this.
Well,
check this out.
It's extremely successful. Literally millions of people go to the High Line in Lower Manhattan every year because they like this. We love nature. We really do.
I think I want to hand out hand lenses to everybody and say, look close at these insects.
You miss your train, so what?
Yeah.
See what else we have here. Well, there's the big lawn right there.
Oh.
Why?
Yeah.
That's a big question. Why?
Oh, and let's talk about Homegrown National Park. So this is my idea to try to use social media to spread this word that we need the idea that everybody's a part of conservation. Everybody. We need that idea to go viral. So if you join Homegrown National Park, it's free, you're not paying anything, but what you're doing is registering where you live and the amount of area, the amount of lawn that you're gonna convert to native plantings. And then your little piece of your county will pop up, firefly will light up.
Nice.
And we're trying to get 20 million acres, cut the area of lawn in half. If we cut the area of lawn in half, we're going to create a new national park that will be bigger than all of the existing big national parks in the lower 48 states, just by getting to people to remove some of that deadly lawn and putting in some life. So we're encouraging everybody to get on the map, join Homegrown National Park. And people say, are you going to use my data? I don't even know what that means. Use it I can't even find my password, but no, we're not using your data. But so we've got
a brilliant idea.
I have 11,000 people on the map so far, I think. So, but we need 11 million on there. So we need this to get going. So.
Yeah. And can anybody, anywhere in the world register?
Right now it's the US, soon to be the US and Canada. This is all about the technology of building this system. This tech stuff is expensive.
Oh yeah.
We have a new tech company now. So yeah, we'd love it for everybody in the world to do it, but we're just not there yet. When I say we, it's me and Michelle Alfanderi. She's the one who said, well, we've got to bring this idea to the people who are not already in the choir.
Right.
He said, you always talk to the choir. I said, well, those are the people that invite me, but we've got to reach the people who don't realize they're part of conservation.
Yeah. And we see that with, with the hope spots, we'll have people, or just people that don't understand how they're connected to the ocean. They'll say, I live in a landlocked state,
Exactly.
landlocked country.
How can I,
why does the ocean matter to me? And they really aren't understanding is that, it's the water cycle and everything.
It's the carbon cycle.
It's the carbon cycle, and everything that goes into the river or creek next to the lake next to their house, it ultimately gets back to the ocean.
Yeah. And people say, oh, that's too complicated. You can't teach people that. And I say, are you kidding? Look how complicated your iPhone is. And everybody knows how to do that. So it's not too complicated. It's
not at all.
We haven't taught.
Well, and when you understand, truly, your life depends on it. There's a certain motivation. You can do something to protect your life, protect the air, the water, you're not helpless. You might seem that way sometimes. I mean, it is kind of overwhelming, but just focus on what's happening. I mean,
Yeah.
you put that chart up there showing how much has declined. We're on a roll now. How much are we recovering? That's
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Yeah.
Here's a movement in the other direction, so that in the next, those people can think in terms of maybe a 10-year block of time and set a goal. Well, that's what you're doing. We need to actually exceed the amount in homegrown national parks of all of the official national parks. How fast can we get there?
Yeah. Well, this is why I tell people,
We're in.
you are nature's best hope.
Yeah. We definitely are.
If we do it, we can do it. But if we don't, it's not going to happen. So
So nature is your best hope,
No,
for sure.
right. It's a collaborative relationship. Right now we've got this adversarial relationship. You got to beat back nature.
Yeah.
We're biting the hand that feeds us. It makes no sense.
And I also love the kind of the movement that I've been seeing recently, at least here, is that, we're seeing more of these sort of, native plant specific nurseries that are cropping up, or native plant exchanges,
Oh, yeah. But-
seed banks, things like
But
that.
most nurseries are like 99% not native,
Right.
and maybe a concession, a little place where you can get the local native plants.
But it's,
We
but
need to
it's-
flip that.
yeah, but it's one of those, another place where I think consumers can make a huge difference. And
Yeah, where are the native plants?
yeah, you go in and say, I don't want to buy, I don't know, mums. I want to get that milkweed, and making sure that it's actually the milkweed that's supposed to be there, not,
Yeah.
because that's a big problem that I've heard people talk about, is they
Putting
think
the wrong, like the
wrong
trillion,
milkweed.
the Trillion Tree Project is a wonderful idea, but only if you plant the right trees in the right place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And take
I
care of
heard
them.
the other day that they want to plant Paulownia, which is the princess tree from China. They
Why?
want to plant it in Africa
Wow.
because it grows, it can survive there. I'm saying, but what about African trees? I mean,
Yeah.
the planet has two big problems: climate change and biodiversity loss. You can address both of them by planting the right plants.
Yes.
Exactly.
So,
And so when
We need a
gardeners
bigger
can-
megaphone for you, Doug.
yeah, when consumers go to some place like, Home Depot or Lowe's or Ace Hardware or wherever, and they see some plants, just to try to make that conscious effort to ask for more selection of the local plants, of the native plants, and then to, of course, patronize the local nurseries that are trying to support this effort.
Mhm.
and don't buy we say, do you have this particular plant? Oh, you don't? Walk out.
Yeah.
Because you've got to put the market pressure on them.
Yeah.
These places just want to sell plants. They don't care which plant they sell, as long as they sell one.
Yeah.
And if they get it that the market is changing, and it is, the demand for native plants now far exceeds the supply. So there's motivation to start to make more of these plants.
And that's what it's going to take, is that, and again, that's something that every single one of us can do, and make a positive change that way.
Mhm. The decline of the monarch has been, from a public relations perspective, it's been a wonderful thing because people like this beautiful orange butterfly. It's an excellent example of host plant specialization. You're not going to have monarchs without milkweeds. And they're like pretty much all the other moths and butterflies out there.
Yeah.
And they're starting to realize why we've lost it. We've lost the monarch because we've taken away the milkweeds.
Yeah.
Put the milkweeds back, and you will help the monarch again. It's very simple concepts, and the country's grabbed onto that. We got Monarch Watch, we've got monarch way stations, and millions of people are trying to save the monarch, which shows they care. So,
Yeah. I even see them sometimes on social media. They'll say, "Oh, I've got these caterpillars, but they've eaten all the milkweed that's in my yard.
Yeah.
And do you have some that I can come get? Because I want to keep feeding them."
Oh yeah, I get these emails. I planted milkweeds for the monarchs, but worms got on them, so I squished them.
Oh no.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Oh man.
What about this? Don't you understand?
Yeah. Well, should we go over to some questions?
Are people sending in questions?
We've got a couple questions in the queue.
Okay, sure. You do that, I'll look for something else here.
All right.
There,
Stephanie. Oh,
that's my granddaughter, if you want to see her.
Oh, all right.
Little
Oh,
Lisbon.
oh, yeah, that's awesome. I have a similar picture of myself with a chameleon on top of my head somewhere.
And one of your grandkids with cicadas.
Cicadas, yeah. So Stephanie's asking, growing up in the 70s and 80s, we used to have trucks that would drive around and produce chemical fog of sorts to get rid of mosquitoes.
Huh.
A generation attributes the lightning bug disappearance to this fog. Do they still utilize this, in your opinion? How much of an impact has this specific thing had on insects now versus then?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
I love this image.
Yes, unfortunately, we
Yeah.
still have it. This is Mosquito Joe. It's a booming business all over the country. And he's undoing everything I've been talking about for the last 15, 20 years. But this fogging industry says it's okay because what they're fogging is pyrethroids, which is a natural product. They say it's natural, it's okay. And it is natural. It's from chrysanthemums, but cyanide is natural too. So that's not a good argument.
Yeah, so is arsenic.
He also says it's only going to kill mosquitoes, which is just not the case. And there were huge monarch kills that flew through Mosquito Joe's fog a couple of years ago. There were hundreds of monarchs dead on the ground.
Wow.
It kills all the insects that comes in contact with. So yes, it's very much alive. Please don't hire Mosquito Joe. If you want to control your mosquitoes, try mosquito dunks. You get a bucket and you fill it full of water, put in a handful of straw or hay, let it sit there for a couple of days. And what happens, it's building up the populations of algae and diatoms. And that's what mosquito larvae eat. So the female mosquitoes that want to lay their eggs are really attracted to this brew that you've made, and they'll lay their eggs in your bucket. Then you go to the hardware store and you get a sheet of mosquito dunks. That's Bacillus thuringiensis, a natural bacterium. Excuse me, I'm going to burp here. That only kills aquatic diptera, and the only aquatic diptera in your bucket is a mosquito larva. So it's extremely targeted. This costs $9, so it's cheaper. It's not killing anything else. And if everybody did this, we could control mosquitoes the way you're supposed to, instead of in the adult stage. That's the thing. This doesn't work.
No.
To control mosquitoes in the adult stage, you have to kill 90% of them. Mosquito Joe kills between 10 and 50%. So he's not even close to being effective.
Well, not only that, but it's taking away food from, swallows and bats and
That's right. And our
dragonflies.
swallows are in terrible shape. They're declining. Yeah.
And, and if a mosquito is bothering you, like your outdoor barbecue, just get a fan. They're really bad flyers. You can just kind of.
They will not. That's right. That's good.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I was going to show you, this is where is it? This is a great analogy. David Quammen came up with this a couple of years ago. There's a functional Persian rug. That is not 71 Persian rugs. That's 71 rug fragments. And that's what we've done to our ecosystems.
Wow.
It is awesome.
The UN talks about biosphere reserves as places of ecological significance. And I hate that language because it suggests that there are places on planet Earth with no ecological significance. But not true. Every square inch of the planet has ecological significance, including our yards and our corporate landscapes and our roadsides. And that big blank ocean that you can't see anything in, tremendous ecological significance.
Huge.
So we've got to glue our rug back together again by putting the plants back, not just to make biological corridors that plants and animals can move back and forth between viable habitats, but to create viable habitats where we've destroyed them. When we do this, and we're starting to do it, when we do it, it'll be the first time that we humans are coexisting with nature. We're all living together because it's the only future for the model, or the only model for the future. Okay,
absolutely. Okay. Susan is asking us, on oaks, for example, how do we know whether caterpillars are eating the leaves or if the tree is just stressed by weather, heat, or somehow disturbed? I understand I could physically look, but what if the damage is up higher in the tree?
The
Now,
ladder.
the big problems for oaks in most places are not insects. It's diseases, the diseases we brought in, the sudden oak death syndrome and
Mhm.
bacterial leaf scorch and oak wilt. These are very hard on our oaks in many parts of the country. And I hear horticulturists and foresters say, well, don't plant oaks anymore because they're going to get sick and die. And I say just the opposite. Plant more oaks than ever because we need to find resistance to these things. We've brought these diseases in. Our forested ecosystems cannot do without oaks, period. We lost the chestnut, because we brought that disease in. So we can't just keep whittling things away. So plant more oaks than ever. And the ones that make it are the ones that are going to be the future. So some of our oaks are stressed. It's almost never insects that are doing that, except when we bring in non-native insects like the gypsy moth.
Yep.
And I know we're not supposed to call it the gypsy moth anymore. I don't remember what the new name is supposed to be, but an insect from another country is running amok just like the plants from another country. There's no natural enemies to keep them in check.
The same thing happens in the ocean with the
Lionfish,
lionfish, for
yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Taking away all the snappers and the groupers and the sharks, and so they have nobody to eat them. So they're eating everybody else. Otherwise would have been, anyway,
Never gotten a foothold.
disrupted the harmony.
So we have a question from Marjorie. It's kind of a two-part question. She wants to know, are there any good resources that you can recommend to identify what plants are native to my particular town or supposed to be in my yard? And what is the best first step that I can take to convert my yard to becoming native? Where do I start?
I'm going to take the second question first. The easiest thing to do, and it depends on where you are. You want to do things that are appropriate to the biome that you live in. But the easiest thing to do is to add a tree to your yard and plant it small, because small trees can establish their root systems. They're not suffering transplant shock. When you plant a big tree, you've chopped up most of its roots to do that. It takes them a decade to recover, and they're very expensive. So plant small and then build a bed around that tree. So as it grows, you don't have grass right up to the trunk. You're building a soft landing spot for all of the insects that are going to depend on that tree. Most of them fall to the ground and pupate underground. And when we mow and compact our soil, it's rock hard and they can't get underground to pupate. That is the easiest thing to do. A lot of people say, well, I'm gonna do a meadow. I'll just stop mowing. Well, if you just stop mowing, you have long cool season European grasses instead of short cool season European grasses. So meadows are actually one of the hardest things to do. Depending on where you live, if you live in the east, it rains a lot, and that means it wants to be a forest, not a prairie system. Our prairies and meadow systems were maintained because of grazers, because of the bison, because of constant fire, because of the huge Pleistocene mammals, all these things we've gotten rid of. So if you're going to have a meadow, you have to there's a lot of input to maintain it as a meadow. So it's not the easiest thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find out what's native around you? There's a tool on the National Wildlife Federation website called Native Plant Finder. And if you go to that and put in your zip code, the ranked list of the best genera of native plants, both woodies and herbaceous for your county, will pop up. And that's a good place to start. If you live in California, there's even a better tool. It's called Calscape. And they have geo-referenced every single native plant in the entire state. So it pulls up a map. You can look and say, this is where I live, and it'll give you all the native plants that occur in your area.
That's an awesome resource and such a great time of the year to be thinking about, what are you going to do when the snow melts or when the rain stops, and be able to get out there and dig in, dive in.
And if there is not a list in your area, well, how about starting one?
Yeah, but this is where Google's a good thing. If you put in native plants of your county, they will pop up. There's a lot of resources online now.
That's awesome. And Michelle is asking, what are one or two points you can suggest for people to help promote the native planting idea town and citywide? You have the map, but what can the average citizen do to push or encourage their town to get on board with becoming green, pesticide free and native only?
Yay, I love that.
Well, every city, every town has a commission that is in charge of street tree plantings. So it depends on where you are, but you can influence them. Find out who are the members there. What are the criteria they're using to choose those trees? There's a lot of cities that will offer you free trees for planting in front of your house. Just make sure that the trees are appropriate to your area. And there are people starting to do this. St. Louis has got a number of really good programs in terms of getting the native plant message out to the people that live there. So a woman named Jean Ponzi, I hope she doesn't get mad at me for giving her name out, but she's a wonderful resource. Google Jean Ponzi and she will help you find the right native plants.
Another thing is to work with the local media, tell stories, get them to put the spotlight on either problems or solutions or both. But it takes, everybody can do something, but it takes a lot of people to really bring about this change of attitude. And Doug, you're aspiring to make this at least national, but it's an idea that should take over the whole world because it's the right thing to do. We have to restore, protect what remains of the fabric of life that's still in pretty good shape and restore what we can as quickly as we can. Because
it's our only viable option. It really is. So, which makes it a no-brainer. It's not debatable,
It's just the truth.
That's really great. So Benita is lamenting the fact that she, in her area around Orange Park, Florida, they're still spraying for mosquitoes over the 36 years that she's been there. And they're continuing to do it today. And she's noticed that the bird population has also declined. And even in the El Nino year, they had no hurricanes. So it's, it can't, I get that it could be really, frustrating and depressing, but it just seems that, all any of us can do are just to try to make the small changes we can in our daily lives and try to lead by example and get others on board where you can. And then, kind of
start something.
Look
in the mirror. What are you able to do?
But I know it's just,
and read Doug's books.
Yes.
That'll get you going.
We have to follow the science. We have to start trusting science. The reason Mosquito Joe took off around the country was when Zika virus came to Florida. Except it never really came. People infected came, and it was only 2 or 3 of them, but Zika virus was never established in Florida. Immediately, they started spraying in New York City for Zika virus. There's no logic to it.
No.
But it was all based on fear and the media. So,
we need to get media to spread the truth. What a concept.
Yeah, that is a tough one. That's a big ask right there.
Whoa. I wanted to show this slide because the earth does have tremendous problems and it does seem it's overwhelming, and people always say, what can one person do? But what I'm talking about makes this problem manageable. It empowers you. One person can shrink the amount of lawn they have. One person can turn out their lights at night to save the moths. One person can get rid of their invasive plants. One person can put in a pollinator garden. One person can use keystone plants. One person can totally revitalize the little ecosystem in their yard, which will help the greater ecosystem around them. And it does shrink that problem down, the entire global problem down to something that's manageable. If you don't think about the entire world's problem, because you will get depressed, but you can influence the place where you live. So this is supposed to make it manageable so that you don't just give up, because otherwise it.
That's also true.
It is very, very true. And the same way that, so you're always saying, leave no child dry.
Yeah.
What's our
That's great.
what's our homegrown national park equivalent? Like leave no child clean, you know, get them out there digging and potting and
Little mud never hurt anybody.
mud never hurt. Yeah.
Think about that. That's good.
Yeah. 'Cause that's, you know, I mean, some of the best memories I have are just kind of getting out in the yard and, you know, finding insects, finding
Miracles.
bugs, finding these little guys
Finding miracles.
and just, you know, finding those spiders, finding these moths that are so blended into the pollinators of all kinds, and just looking at marvelous adaptations.
We're talking about developing a personal relationship with Mother Nature, because then you care about it. And particularly for our kids, they're the future stewards of our planet. If they don't care, if they don't know why they're supposed to be stewarding, if they don't know how to steward, they're going to be lousy stewards, and we can't afford any more lousy stewardship. So, but they're not going to be great stewards if they don't care about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Another way, they don't like doing it. We want them to like nature, not fear it.
Right. Exactly. If you get
Like those Boy Scouts
Like
leaping back.
Exactly.
they
Yeah.
came
They're so
back,
brave.
they came around pretty quickly. You know, they all kind of laughed about it, but it's that, you know, they just been taught that spiders might hurt them. The only other really great reaction I got is when at the farmer's market, there was a bumblebee. He was like stranded on the concrete. Yeah, it was just heat exhaustion or something. He just couldn't get up, you know, he's just like walking around on there. So I put my hand down, he climbed up on my hand and I carried him off to the bushes and everybody freaked out, you know, like, he's going to sting you. And I'm like, what's a bumblebee? Come on. How bad can he be?
You live to talk about it. That's great.
Yeah. But you know, he actually seemed, you know, like grateful to get back onto sort of a moist leaf where he could kind of cool off and rehydrate.
Be a bumblebee.
Be a bumblebee.
You know, to all the young mothers out there, you have tremendous sway over what your kids, how they're going to see the world. If you see a spider in your house and you scream or you squish it or something, it sends the message. This is a terrible thing. It's dangerous, and it's very hard to overcome that. So even if you don't like spiders, and I get that, keep the lid on it. You know.
Yeah.
Don't scare your kids, because
get one of these
yeah, get this jar. Yeah, this is what you do. You take the jar, you get the
spider
paper, and yeah, take it outside. That's what we do. Yeah. So amazing.
Be kind to your neighbors.
Be kind to the neighbors. So, well, we're a little bit past the top of the hour, and we don't think we have any more questions. Let's take one quick look. Yeah, we're all good with our questions. Just a couple of thank you comments. And we really are so grateful to you, Doug, for taking time from your schedule. I know it's right at the height of grading time and everything else under the sun.
Those grades. And I appreciate the opportunity. This is always fun. It was great to meet both of you.
Well, you're wonderful. And I want to say thank you as well to our guests and producers at the Ocean Elders. Water connects us all. Native plants connect us all.
Insects connect us all.
Insects connect us all.
Nature connects us all.
Yes, we're so grateful to all of you. And we'll be back in January. And until then, remember that you need to protect the ocean and native plants and nature as if our lives depend on it, because
they do.
They do. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.